As we lie in wait for the fifth and final season of Netflix hit sci-fi horror, fans are now talking about how Stranger Things ending badly would massively help another big franchise. Now, what could this franchise be? But more importantly, what's with this kind of talk? As the Stranger Things series nears its conclusion, there have been talks about concerns on whether the finale will live up to the hype, and if it doesn't, how that would affect other major franchises with infamously disappointing finales is raised. Y'all know how there is but one popular series that holds the title of bad finale. Over the history of television, there have been a few cherished shows that enthralled viewers for several seasons before coming to an abrupt end. The unpleasant fact is that a poor conclusion may ruin a TV show's reputation for a very long time, even if the rest of the show was fantastic. It's currently impossible to foresee where Stranger Things will go before its conclusion. Given that, with 4 seasons under its belt, Stranger Things has so far delighted and amused viewers, with only minor disagreements regarding the show's caliber from season to season. So it's reasonable to believe that the Duffer Brothers will continue to deliver quality work in the 5th and final season. Despite this, Stranger Things' consistency does not entirely rule out the prospect of a disappointing conclusion.
That's a tough one.
Because it needs to inspire me. I'm a huge Joy Division fan, but I would probably use something from Arcade Fire, most likely, just because their first album, Funeral, came out when I was in.
Like those that other well-liked TV series have experienced, and we just have to say it, there's a high chance Stranger Things could inherit Game of Thrones' title of bad finale. If Stranger Things does have a dreadful ending, Game of Thrones, which is currently the standard for bad finales, will probably be replaced. After 8 seasons of treachery and murder, Game of Thrones finished in 2019 with a resounding sense of disappointment. And yes, to this day, it's still a hot topic online, heck, even offline. One notable concern was that the finale was anticlimactic, and many thought that the entire last season had been rushed. Furthermore, the stakes of the last battle in Game of Thrones were not high enough, and several scenarios did not unfold as dramatically as they might have. As a result, Game of Thrones Season 8 was widely seen as a letdown, and the show gradually lost its appeal. Inheriting the reputation from Lost, Game of Thrones is the series that many people think of when they discuss infamously poor TV finales. It was the last major property to have a terrible ending, but Stranger Things will probably replace Game of Thrones if it fails to deliver a strong series finale. You know why? It's because Stranger Things appeals to both youngsters and adults, and it may potentially have a larger audience than Game of Thrones. Like the Game of Thrones finale, if a sizable portion of the audience is unhappy with the conclusion, it is likely to be mocked in television history. Although many of us may dread Stranger Things' potentially bad ending, there's also a high chance that the ending of Game of Thrones could, and take this with a grain of salt, evaluate it. So this is the only silver lining throughout this whole ordeal. The HBO series conclusion may receive a much needed redemption arc if Stranger Things succeeds Game of Thrones as the ultimate bad finale franchise. If Stranger Things has a bad ending, it will be natural for viewers to compare it to other notoriously bad endings. The conclusion to Game of Thrones will either look better or worse than Stranger Things in this scenario. Game of Thrones will be relieved of the criticism it has received since its conclusion if the negative Stranger Things finale replaces the painful memories of Daenerys Targaryen's controversial villain role. Critics may even rewatch the Game of Thrones finale after it has been reevaluated to find that, several years later, it does not seem as bad as it did at the time. Another popular show just needs to end badly for Game of Thrones to lose its bad press. But you know, at the end of the day, all of these speculations are one big if. After all, there's also a high possibility that Stranger Things won't end badly. The likelihood of Stranger Things having a terrible finale comparable to Game of Thrones is slim. Stranger Things has consistently earned positive reviews, unlike Game of Thrones, which fell off from season to season. Season 4 of Stranger Things may not have been the most well-liked, but it still upheld the franchise's reputation for excellence and brand, unlike Game of Thrones, which by the conclusion of the series was not always achieving that. According to its past performances, Stranger Things has a higher chance of having a fantastic, or at the very least, a decent series finale. There's also the fact that Stranger Things also has less to live up to when compared to Game of Thrones. The HBO show needed to address specific topics because it was based on George R.R. Martin's book series, so there's pressure there. But then again, when the said series wrapped up, Martin's last book still wasn't finished. finished, hence the controversial ending. On the contrary, the ending of Stranger Things is completely up to the Duffer Brothers, as long as it fulfills character arcs and plot threads. This makes it seem unlikely that the finale of Stranger Things will be as awful as Game of Thrones, but then again, we're not too sure. It's too early to tell after all. Game of Thrones should be ready for a comeback, if not after Stranger Things, then after the next disappointing season finale. So what else do these two shows share in common? There's the obvious fact that they both enjoy killing off fan favorites each season. Honestly speaking, we're still not over Eddie's death in season 4, so can we expect much bloodshed in the final season? Maybe, maybe not. Every fan of Stranger Things has been wondering who the Duffer Brothers kill off in season 5. Although the show doesn't have the same reputation for gore and cruelty as, say, Game of Thrones, many fans seem to believe that many characters will pass away in the series' final seasons, and this is because of several factors, including the fact that Stranger Things is infamous for giving its main characters plot armor, which some have argued detracts from the show's overall excellence. Others might believe that the program would gain the emotional weight it needs to be a home run, as David Harbour has dubbed the final season if one of the main characters died. However, too many character deaths may deprive the show of its concepts and even contradict the nostalgic inspiration it bears. The show has never asserted that it is a kill-em-all slasher or that its primary characters will be eliminated brutally and harshly. As a result, Stranger Things Season 5 will not abruptly change course and begin murdering off many of the characters. Like, come on, they're practically kids. Although the Stranger Things cast members are now adults,
I wanted him to disappear. The day that he died, I think that's why I just stood there.
their characters are still in their early teens. The primary group of young people was around 15 only last season. The 5th season of Stranger Things is believed to feature a time jump, although it's most likely not going to take place too far into the future or out of the 1980s. The characters need to talk about what happened in Hawkins at the end of season 4 as soon as possible because of how soon the finale will air. And if Stranger Things decides to murder off a child character, that'll be a major problem. The child characters will probably all still be under 18 when the series resumes, because even a 3-year gap in time seems too great for the show to leap ahead. When they won't be dealing with the repercussions of such an event, would the Duffers kill off one of the beloved child characters and disappoint fans? Naturally, that leaves the adult characters, but killing them indiscriminately will have its drawbacks as well. But compared to George R.R. Martin, the Duffer Brothers don't write as cruelly as the GOT creator, so that's a small spark of hope right there. With that, this has been how Stranger Things ending badly will massively help another big franchise.